After the hour of 8 a.m. Let me clear the next commercial break, and then we'll chat with Member of Parliament, the Honorable. Program. Glad you are with us this morning. It's 10 minutes after the hour. The constant morning from News. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Soc. Good morning, listeners. Great to be here again.
Glad you're with us. And of course, Member of Parliament, the Honorable Melissa Gumbs.
Morning, Soc.
The PFP.
Morning, Emil.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning. Good morning. So, lots of stuff on the front page this morning. So before I even go there, of course, Party for Progress is part of the 4x2 coalition, if you will, 2x4, depending on how you want to call it, that is now going to form the government, the new government. And I think the only thing we know for sure at this point is that on February 10th, the new
Parliament
would get sworn in.
Yeah.
At which point, then, and I know that the vetting process for who's going to serve on the Council of Ministers, that's, I think, well underway from what I understand.
Well, right now, I think minister candidates are collecting, their documents and everything that has to be submitted. And the screening itself is not yet underway.
Okay.
There's still, talks to be had in this 2x4, 4x2 coalition. And, this is something that I suggested where we kind of move towards a sort of informateur process to kind of iron out the wishes, the desires, the pain points of everybody so that there's no surprises, going along. We have 4 parties in this scenario. So it's a lot of different ideologies. All of us had semi-similar manifestos, but either way, we still have to identify like what's going to be our priorities, moving forward in terms of governance, and what do we think about policy, what's our approach to policy and such. So it's something that I suggested that was, warmly received, and I think we'll have those discussions in the coming weeks while also still vetting candidates for minister.
During the election, PFP had come out with a number of deal breakers.
Yeah.
One of which, for example, was the screening of cabinet staff.
Mm-hmm.
Have your coalition partners agreed to that? And also, I don't know if it's that simple. I don't know if it requires a change in law.
Yeah.
I don't think you can just say, I want this person screened.
Yeah.
So how does that work?
I mean, it's, I believe it kind of happens on some kind of small scale now. That is something that, is going to be a further discussion point. For us right now,
But did they all agree to that?
Yeah. In essence, I believe it, because we told everyone like this is how it's gonna go, and that's why I also suggested the informateur process to go through those discussions. Because if there's something that if out of the three there's one that everyone is kind of like about, well then we have to have that talk. But for the most part, I believe that the parties in this coalition are in agreement with the kind of the trajectory that most of us have outlined during campaign, more so than the existing coalition parties that are also kind of trying to, well, not anymore, but we're trying to have discussion talks about could we maybe form instead. And I think that way
Those have
forward,
stopped.
yeah.
No one. There's no.
I'm not. Yeah.
No one's knocking on your door saying.
Oh, I mean, they're knocking,
Oh,
but
that
it doesn't
won't
mean I
stop.
have to answer. Yeah, the
Yeah.
knocking won't stop. The knocking
With-
didn't
with-
stop this entire 4 years. So
Right, with the 8 to 7.
yeah,
In theory, I mean, at least historically, the 8 have always been looking to increase.
Mhm.
So not necessarily this 8.
Yeah.
But a party of 8 always looks to increase by 1 to sort of keep things a little more stable. And the
But-
other side's always looking for one to jump over
But-
so they can change the
but
government. So
I think whether it's 8 to 7, 9 to whatever, it at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It's really the character and the commitment of the people involved. Because I could look back at like 2015, the Marcel Gumbs cabinet, they were a majority of 10.
Right.
And it's still, the characters involved still tossed it down. So at this point, the numbers don't matter. It's the character of the people that matter, which is what we've always said since 2019. You can't legislate those things. So if people want to break something, they'll break it.
You use the words character.
Mm-hmm.
As you look amongst the leaders of your partners in this new 4x2 coalition, what's your comfort level that this is something that is going to last and stand the test of time for the 4-year governing period?
I'm pretty comfortable. I think, I've always said that there's some people I put my head on the block for, and most of those people aren't PFP. But there is a level of comfort where we were able to say very early on in these discussions that, if things were to start happening that were happening, for example, with this current government, for example, a systemic investigation by High Council of State that came out like with the ombudsman towards the Minister of Rami, I said, make no mistake about it, PFP will flip the whole table over, and we'll tell people why. Because it's also the secrecy of what's happening, of the external players, of the pressure, etc., that has kept this culture that we have going. And at some point in time, someone has to be willing to say, no, like you're coming to me, you're trying to pressure me as minister for whatever. It's not going to happen. And I will tell the people why, and then just flip it. That I think is how it has to go.
When you say flip it,
Pull support, like in no uncertain terms, we stated that like we would get up from the table, and you have to be willing to do that. I've said before, even on the radio, that had I been prime minister, I would have politely said, can you resign, make your seat vacant. If that didn't happen, or if I was responded to in the ways that I heard the prime minister was responded to, I would have said, okay, well then I'm going to fire you. You have that capability. And if you need the whole accom for it, and the whole accom says, no, we're not going to do that, then maybe we just need to, have early elections and explain to everyone why. Accountability cannot just stop at the door. It has to be let in. It has to go through the entire house, and it has to clear out whatever has to clear out. It can't be that accountability stops right here and then it's but now when it comes to me, or to us or to Emil, like let's say we're all in a calm together. It can't stop there. I have to be able to have that conversation. And if you mess up, you know, it's either you vacate it, and if you refuse, we figure out another way. And if you push to the extreme, you should be willing to, for the sake of the country, make that tough decision because stability at all costs. It's pretty much why we're where we're at. This coalition in the beginning, there was a lot of refusal to work with, for example, the USP. It was publicly stated, a party of questionable characters and so forth. But when, your coalition was crumbling, you didn't have a problem forming with two members from that particular party.
So PFP campaigned heavily on and continues to
Yeah.
tout. But in a sense, PFP has 3 seats now, right? Because, well, PFP
Yeah.
has 2, but you have Ludi. So I mean now before the election.
Right.
So you've in a sense dropped from three representatives in parliament to 2 representatives.
Mhm.
The votes have come in a little bit lower than they did during the last election for the candidates who've run before. So, and I'm a person who really does see the value and believe in integrity, but does the voting population understand and appreciate
I don't think
how
they're there yet.
integrity, right?
Yeah, I
how
don't
it
think
influences day-to-day life?
I don't think they're there yet. And this is all part of voter education that has to continue and that will continue. From now until the next election, because I don't think that they quite understand the dollars and cents of it. I've had people say that, like, on election day, there was still, even with the removal of the curtain, yes, there was still a lot of vote buying that we were told was occurring at certain polling stations. There was no police presence outside these polling stations to observe this type of behavior, but candidates observed it, supporters observed it, and I think that you'll always have persons that are desperate and in a bad state, in a vulnerable state, and they will sell their vote, not understanding that what they've done today is going to resonate for the next 4 years, because they're thinking about living for today and tomorrow. That's it. That's as far as people can usually think when they're in that particular state. So it's really now about improving their lot in life, through a different approach to policy, through a different approach to generating revenue for government, and then when people's needs are being met, then I think you'll see that understanding of, oh wait, this is not actually the way that it's supposed to go. Yeah.
I want to go back to, I guess, also tied to where we were with vote buying, because that is very much about character and integrity and understand. A lot of it is education. When we look at the 4x2 members,
Let's stick to 2x4. My ADHD is making me.
Yeah, 2x4. Smack. All I can think of is the piece of lumber smacking me across the table. Anyways, when I think about the existing coalition, or when you take any team that's that big, right? It goes through stages of formation. You start to form, and then you do a little bit of storming, and then eventually you get to a part where you perform. When I look at where we are, when we're in the forming stage, at some point the storming is gonna begin.
Yeah.
And that means, right, that we have to be able to have hard conversations, be able to disagree on an issue, but still say, I support the coalition. And that takes intestinal fortitude, or as my dad would say, guts. And emotional and intellectual maturity to do that. Does this new coalition have the ability to do that?
I think so far from the discussions that we've had, we're there, persons, like I said, at the end of the day, I have to worry about myself and the Party for Progress, and how we present ourselves. And we've always been very transparent, bluntly so, whether it's in parliament, whether it's in private, to our colleagues, just to let them know that we're not here to play. Like, this is not a game. This is people's lives, essentially, when you look at it. And I think that, leading by that example, we will see others start to kind of, okay, yeah, maybe this is the way that we need to maneuver. Because again, there's been this type of, well, I'm going to stay in my corner in this coalition and you stay in yours. But we made it very clear that this silo operation of government, these silo ministries where you have, the Ministry of VSA doing work that should be done by the Ministry of ECYS, fixing basketball courts, like that has to stop. It's either we collaborate and we do it together, or nothing is going to move forward. And we've made that very clear. And I think that and you already see from a campaign perspective the impact that PFP has had on other parties, including the legacy parties. Because let's be real, most campaigns try to mimic ours from 2019, from now, and it was cute in a way, but it's already a sign of people resonate with the way that we operate, and they're going to continue to, and others will just try to form themselves into what we are, with varying results. But ultimately, I think that if we continue to lead by example and we set that standard, that people will just continue to try to reach it, and eventually they'll get there. Maybe not these now, but the generation after them probably will get there.
So I assume the coalition's working on a governing accord,
Yeah.
right? So for the listeners, basically the incoming government will make a document that explains what their priorities are, right? Because now you need to take your different manifestos and merge them into one document.
Yeah.
How's that process going?
Yeah, no, so that's I think a lot of us were waiting for the results to be recounted and for it to be, final, set in stone.
Mm-hmm.
The governor himself has to make a decision on what way we go forward. Like, does he move towards an informator or a formateur directly?
Can you explain the difference quickly?
So an informator, essentially, it's a third party that is going to, it could be one or two actually, persons, based on a recommendation of names submitted by either one or more parties. And what they're tasked with is figuring out what works. Normally, you don't have a majority that said we can work together. However, it can still happen because you also have to check with the other parties, like, where are there opportunities for alignment as a whole? Because ultimately, we are all going to be sitting in parliament together, whether you're a coalition or not. The informateur then goes through the wishes, the desires, the pain points, like I mentioned, of the different parties involved. And then we kind of try to cobble that together, where the similarities lie, into what can then be the governing program and approach. And the differences you have to figure out, like, can we agree to disagree? What is a hard limit? What's a soft limit? And see where those where we can maneuver in those spaces. The formateur is then we form in government. That's it. Like, that's when the process of, you're submitting your minister candidates, the screening begins, etc. So that it's two different processes. The informateur is sort of that in between step, like a mediator step almost, which I think is very important, because what we've seen with a lot of our governments, our coalition governments, is that they sign an agreement 2 hours after the last result is counted, sometimes before. They don't have those hard conversations early on. It's like any relationship. If you get together with someone, and you're, it's nice. It's that new relationship energy. I feel so good with this person. And then 5 months down the line, you realize you don't like the way they chew.
They leave the cap off the toothpaste.
They leave the cap off the toothpaste. They use the wrong frying pan. They broke your favorite coffee cup. Like, they don't like to do laundry. Like, you have to have those conversations in between, and before you commit. And I think that that's an important step for us to take now. And if we all agreed, we're trying to do a different approach to politics in St. Martin. So we have to take that mediation step and see where can we best come together to govern.
And that everybody is on the same page. Everybody is receptive to that.
Yeah, when I floated the idea, most were receptive to it, and they understood, it's going to take some time. And if you even look at the pages of the coalition agreement, it does mention a third party that is going to figure out these points between the parties involved.
So when you look across all the coalition leaders right now, where's the where are the strong points, where are the weak points?
I think we all have our strong points. In terms of weak points, a lot of people have come back to us and said that they're concerned about an external party that has been, associated with the Now Party, but their leader has taken great steps to distancing themselves from that person, even on the radio.
I have not seen that, but we will ask him.
Yeah, no, I believe he was on. I believe it was on Lady Grace yesterday in the morning, and basically said that they're put his distance between it, and persons were messaging and saying, yeah, and I'm like, this is an external party. An external party can always be neutralized. There are persons that will be sitting next to me in Parliament that we flat out said we're not entertaining talks with them, that I can't neutralize. I can't neutralize my peer, my equal, based on the votes that they received or purchased or whatever. And that's the reality of it, So I think that I'm more worried about what is sitting in Parliament than someone making their mouth big, in videos.
What I'm worried about is that with the absence of someone speaking for the coalition, that someone pretending that they're speaking for the coalition becomes reality, and that perception can do significant damage.
And I think that's why MP Emmanuel took that step to distance himself, from that individual, just to
and that's why
put
we
that
reached
space
out to the coalition to come in to speak, because I think it's important that you assert your position and make sure that your voices are the relevant voices and not those of others.
Well, I have never met MP Emmanuel. He's one of the few that I don't know.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking forward to meeting him when he's on the program tomorrow.
I think you'll find he's unintentionally hilarious.
So we'll get along just fine.
Unintentionally hilarious. There have been times in Parliament where I'm like, what?
You know what? Here's the one thing I will say about him. When I listen to some of the words and things that he has said, I necessarily disagree with what he's saying. But how it comes out sometimes a little, shall we say, very rough around the edges.
Yeah. And I've said, like I've told people, you can make a good point, but the way in which you make that point also matters. And I've said this. I said, you're never wrong. You're rarely wrong, but when you are right, people miss the message because of the delivery. Yeah, the delivery method. So, but yeah, it's a.
So how about, there are some big philosophical differences, I think. For example, the perspective and approach towards the kingdom, the universal health insurance.
Yeah.
How are you working out those big issues?
Save your response with a quick break. That's
okay.
Right after the commercial. with us, our manager at Free Broadcasting Network News, and member of Parliament Melissa Gumbs. So you had just asked Melissa about the philosophical differences and how we
Well, there's some
solve
major differences in philosophies. So, for example, the approach to the kingdom, universal health insurance. So, how do you reconcile those big?
So
differences?
that's part of why we asked for the informateur process, to make sure that there is alignment in as many of those areas as possible. And if there isn't, then we have to, find a way around them that works in the best interest of the people. So I think that here, like I said, we're accustomed of rushing governments and coalition agreements, I guess, because everyone is anxious to dash into a position of power. But, if you take that step to really figure out, well, what are our thoughts on this? What are our thoughts on that? Because you can say whatever during campaign or on the floor of parliament or so if you were elected previously. But now it's really about looking at things objectively, not just from the political side of it, or that I'm playing politics to attack you and to get votes side of it, but what actually is going to work. So I'm looking forward to those discussions, like I said, and kind of ironing out, where the alignment does actually fall. I do know, sorry, on general health insurance, there are deep concerns. I know for myself, for MP Westcott, for MP Emmanuel, that we've expressed as well, in Parliament and off the floor of Parliament. And I think that there, you're going to see a kind of focus on deep diving into it and figuring out how we can move forward with that particular topic.
It seems to me a bit disgraceful, right? When we look about where we've been, and we were supposed to announce or start in January of this year with our universal health insurance, our national health insurance.
Yeah.
And now that's been pushed another year.
Yeah.
And here we go. It looks like we're going to have another push of some sort. And regardless of your opinion on universal health insurance or national health insurance plan, people deserve answers.
Yeah.
And we deserve results.
Well, I mean, and that's really why I said, it's to now see where we're at, truthfully, because, it was supposed to start this year, which was announced by the minister, very, surprisingly to us, because at the time that it was stated that the implementation goal was January 2024, we didn't even have it in Parliament.
Yeah.
So those are the things that we've also said we would like to stray away from. Like, if we're going to communicate something, communicate it properly, and don't just use it as a gimmick for people's attention. And I think that it being pushed to 2025 is a result of the assumption that, this is going to rush through Parliament and be passed in time for me to campaign on it, for election.
Yeah, it didn't happen.
Yeah.
So in contrast to the Netherlands, which has the same political system, right? The formation process there can take quite some time. It can take a long time for them to work out the governing program,
Yeah.
right? And the fact that, and they have a lot more resources.
Yeah.
So the fact that it takes them so long and that we do it so quickly kind of makes you wonder, are steps being skipped? So a thought. Why not incorporate stakeholders from the community as you're developing your governing program?
Yeah.
Why not get the feedback instead of just doing it within the coalition? Why not get outside feedback on it and maybe drag out that process a little bit, but make it a more inclusive process?
We, as a party, PFP, has always consulted with stakeholders. Even though we were not in government, we still found it important to get that input. Most of the questions that I asked, when it came to the idea of pre-clearance and such, was me questioning, air traffic controllers. Like, will this be feasible? What is the traffic like? Is it possible for you guys to handle that traffic plus, what is already there? All of those questions, all of those things we already do. And I think, again, because we've never really had this informateur process happen often, that is also part of it. They're not just talking to the politicians. They're also, expected to go to private sector, go to the NGO sector and such, and get their input on what they themselves see as the issues facing the country and what should be prioritized. So it's not just going to be us that has to have that discussion and decide. It's gonna be with that input from external forces and
Well,
sources.
let's run with that one as an example.
Yeah.
Because I think in the USRM and now the pre-clearance
Yeah.
was a big part of their approach to economic stimulus. I think PFP and DP didn't stress it. It was more
Yeah.
concerned about the actual feasibility, and even if it is possible, what the time frame on it is.
Yes.
Right. So rather than just throw it into your governing program and say, we're going to, I can imagine, we're going to pursue the feasibility of customs
Yes.
pre-clearance, right?
For the U.S.
For the US.
The idea is it makes it easier for airlines to come. You can shorten the process going back to the States and therefore make us a stronger hub function. I understand the concept,
Mhm.
right?
But at what cost?
But so why not run that topic down before you put it in the governing accord
Yeah.
and say, let's really flush this out a little bit, make some phone calls. I mean, you have the authorities.
Yep.
So, and figure out how feasible is this to make this a key point in our economic stimulus
No,
rather than
but
throw it in.
that is the intention of this middle step to forming a government. It is, to get down to it, because first of all, you can put it in your governing program all you like. The US State Department has said that for now that is on hold. And I don't presume to, know what the what the U.S. State Department is thinking, but I do speak a little bit of diplomat. And for me, I
So
coming.
that means we're not interested right now. That's what it means.
Yeah, so I think that persons also have to learn to read between the lines of what is being said, and you cannot make. I mean, we all know you cannot make any foreign government or entity do what you would like it to do. So we definitely have to have that conversation and drill it down to, is this actually a reality? And if the State Department has said not right now, do you even want to push for that? Because you're not going to get anywhere.
Well, the other thing to remember, right, if we were going to do this, the original plan was, if you look at Princess Juliana International Airport, it's like a half moon,
Yes.
the building.
Yeah.
And the original thought was to then build the other half of the moon out over where the employee parking lot is now. And
Yes.
that would be the U.S. pre-clearance wing. So effectively, we'd be doubling the size of the airport, which isn't necessarily a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
But when you look at where all of our traffic comes from, the majority of it is U.S. So now we've got half of the building now servicing this function.
Yes.
And the other half servicing a much smaller group, which certainly creates opportunity for growth from other destinations.
Yeah.
But what's the cost?
The cost, and not just that, but you're starting from build a building and let's just put it in. But can we handle that traffic? Can our runway handle that traffic? Are we going to end up in a scenario where, there's flights scheduled to land, but most of them are in a holding pattern until we can clear, some space and such.
And if you think about it, right, if we did this with exactly the amount of air traffic that we have now, the answer is yes, we can handle it. We're doing it now. But then as now we've got to fill up this extra empty side of the terminal to keep ourselves sustained. That's where we start to have a problem.
And Soc, just to touch on what you said, that we're doing it now. Yes, we're handling the traffic now, but are we handling it well? And this is not to disparage our airport workers, our air traffic controllers, because again, my dad was an air traffic controller, so I reached out to him. I reached out to others, for their insight and input, especially following that Air Carib incident where the engine caught fire and they had to circle back and make a landing. And that was at night, thankfully. But if something like that had happened on a Saturday at, let's say, 12:30 p.m., how would that have gone? And I think that's what I mean when I say, do they have room to add, or are they already stretched to capacity and beyond? And I think that if we listen to what the air traffic controllers themselves have been saying, they're stretched beyond. So,
and when you hear that from air traffic controllers, that's not just the St. Martin thing.
Yes,
that's kind of a global problem.
Yes, exactly. But but remember, our air traffic controllers have to keep not just an eye on Juliana, but they have to keep an eye on Statia, Saba, Anguilla, St. Bart's. You understand? So it's, again, are they able to comfortably add this traffic, or are they stretched beyond capacity?
But remember, the airport is a multi-phase development, and there was plans, I believe, to put a parallel runway. I guess they call it a taxiway, so that when the planes land, they could pull off. So that would
Yes.
improve the traffic.
It
flow.
should.
But again, that takes time.
Yeah.
And that also involved buying all of the property along Airport Road, along the lagoon, moving the road over,
Mhm.
and then
Yeah.
creating the new taxiway. And we can see the airport has bought up things as they become available, but
Not to that extent yet.
no, we're
Yeah.
not, nowhere near there yet.
Yeah.
So we're into the government that's there now is a transition government. It's a demissionaire government.
Mhm.
We call this a caretaker government.
Yeah, I think when we start the formal process, I believe they become demissionaire. I'm not sure. I think I was trying to get some clarity on that, because you never like it's always been kind of by the seat of your pants, if they're demissionaire or not, and then decisions still get taken. So, are you caretaker?
So if I remember during the campaign, they were talking about they finally have approval for capital
investment. Yeah.
So I could imagine that as an outgoing government, I'd probably like to allocate as much of that as possible. Number one, they can make sure contracts go in a way that they think is good, and also handicaps the next government.
Yes.
I mean, these are some of the games that typically happen.
Yeah.
How are you going to make sure that resources that are there stay there?
So a letter has been sent with the approval of the 4 party leaders in this coalition agreement to the government and to His Excellency Governor Bali to basically say, that there's like a cease and desist request to please not make any type of commitments that are going to hamstring, the incoming government. And I think that if the current government has been big on allegedly integrity and accountability and responsibility, I think that they'll take that seriously.
So, as I understand it, they are allowed to continue work that was in progress, right? Because government cannot stop.
Of course.
Until a new government comes in. And if the capital expenditures were things that were in process already, those expenditures might get committed because it's a in process work.
Yes.
So
and again, I mean, we can say it, but ultimately, if that is already what's in process and has been allocated and such, we don't actually know because, there's not been much communication coming forth about what has already been committed, if anything at all. So it's I think once campaign hit, everyone kind of forgot that there was, a parliament to maybe inform. So it's one of those. We'll see what the damage, if any, is once this new government is sworn in.
And so, what's your take? When do you think we'll be there? Parliament is February.
I think it's the 10th is a Saturday, so I'm not. Yeah, so I don't know if it'll be the 9th or the 12th. I was asking the SG yesterday, but he didn't get back to me as yet. And then last time Parliament swore in February 10th, the new government came in, I think towards the end of March. So if with barring any hiccups in screening, etc., I would say March, April would be the government itself.
Got it.
Wonderful.
Melissa Gumbs, MP, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Leader of the Party for Progress, Emil, thank you for always being with us as we try and dissect and understand these more complicated things. We wish you and the entire team nothing but success as things move forward. And we look forward tomorrow. We talk to MP Christopher Emanuel, who's the leader of the Now Party.
Yes.
On Friday, we talk to Luke Mercelina, who is the leader of the URSM party, and then we will have spoken to all 4 of the party leaders.
Okay.
So, bravo. Thank you.
Thanks
you.
For coming.
Thank you. It is